I'm the Mythology Guy, and I'm wearing my pajamas because I just finished seeing The Sandman on Netflix. I know it's been out for like a week, but it was 10 one-hour-long episodes. It's going to take me longer to get through that than a movie. So, yeah, just finished it. So this is a Neil Gaiman story, like he wrote the comics, and I know he was closely involved with making the show. I have a lot of respect for Neil Gaiman. He's a very good writer, a very good creator. So what did I think of the show overall? Well, I actually really enjoyed it. Now, it's not flawless, and I know there is some controversy with it. Like, there was a lot of race swapping and gender swapping, and there was one gender swap I actually really didn't like, and I'll get into that later. But overall, I did still really enjoy the show. Now, it's worth noting, I have not deeply read the Sandman comics. I know about, Sandman is a very interesting character. He was a superhero with, a sleep gun for a while, then he was another kind of superhero, and then Neil Gaiman kind of recreated him as Morpheus, the god of sleep, and that was the story that really propelled Neil Gaiman and made him a not household name, but a very popular name in the comic space, and this is an adaptation of that. This is an adaptation of the Morpheus version of Sandman. And for anyone who doesn't know, Morpheus is the Greek god of sleep and dreams. And yeah, in this story, and also in Greek mythology, he has several siblings who are also children of Nyx. I don't know if Nyx is in the Neil Gaiman version, but Nyx isn't in this show, so that's how it goes. Now, this story, obviously, first I'm going to talk no spoilers, then I'll do spoilers later, and I'll do an announcement for that. But yeah, this series was a lot of fun for me. It was very enjoyable to Wilda as well. She's very into the Black Mirror stuff, so we had fun watching it, honestly. And it's very well acted, honestly, very well acted. The guy playing Sandman, Morpheus really feels like an otherworldly being in this. I like the way the guy plays him. I made some Twilight jokes in the trailer reaction, but I was just joking around. Some people got offended by them. I was just kidding. I didn't actually mean it looks like Twilight. But yeah, and this is an adaptation of multiple Sandman stories, by the way. It's not just one. It's a few. It's the whole... I don't want to spoil stuff, so I won't say which ones, actually. But I believe at least 3 different Sandman stories are all adapted in here, which surprised me. I thought, they introduced a villain, and I thought that guy was going to be the villain throughout. He's not. Then they introduced another villain, and I thought, oh, this guy's going to be the big final villain. Nope, but there is a villain who does kind of serve, I guess, as the main... It's hard to say. They're, at different times, a different guy is basically the main villain. But they're all interesting villains, especially the... I don't think I'm ruining this. This is in the trailer. I forget his name, but he plays Professor Lupin in Harry Potter. He is such an interesting character, and I really liked him, in this show. And there's an episode with him in particular, and this episode, it feels like a short story, and it was my favorite episode of the season. And this is another thing Neil Gaiman is good at. He's good at writing comics, and he's good at writing short stories. I've seen some of that from him, and it really shines here. There are multiple episodes of this season that feel like their own self-contained short stories, and that they would work really well in that format. Now, some things that I had little issues with here and there is, so they have, and again, this isn't really a spoiler, this stuff is in the trailer, but instead of John Constantine, who Sandman does interact with in the comics and everything, they replaced John Constantine, they gender swapped him. They made him Joanna Constantine. I really didn't like that at all. John Constantine is one of my favorite comic book characters. I love his comics so much. And they just gender swapped him, and there was no reason to do it, is the thing. John Constantine being a woman doesn't make anything better or even different in this adaptation. I don't know why the hell they made John Constantine a woman. And some of you are probably thinking, oh, Joanna Constantine is a thing in the comics. Yeah, but Joanna Constantine is Constantine's ancestor in the comics, and she does meet Sandman. But you know what's amazing? They even do that in this show. They have ancestor Joanna Constantine, and then they also replace John Constantine with another Joanna Constantine. It's so weird. I don't know why the hell they did that. And It's stupid. Why? I don't get why they couldn't just call Matt Ryan and have him come play John Constantine. He loves playing that character. I highly doubt he would have said no. And he's such an entertaining actor. Honestly, I found Joanna Constantine in this to just be boring. And the whole time I was watching her, I was thinking, God, this would be better if Matt Ryan was doing it. And they made it, it's not even a different character or anything. They give her the same backstory as John Constantine, but in a lamer way now, and there was no reason to even show that. I don't know, but it's only for one episode, so it's not that big a deal. Then there's another cast. There's another gender swap, which is also in the trailer, so I'm not giving anything away here. We've got Gwendolyn Christie playing Lucifer. So Lucifer's a woman now. I have mixed feelings about this one, because on the one hand, I love Gwendolyn Christie. She does a good job here, like a lot better than, you know, the Joanna Constantine in this show is not entertaining, but Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer is actually pretty entertaining. But, you know, I always think of Lucifer as a guy, you know, for the same reason you think of Jesus as a guy, you know, it's how you think of him. It's a little weird to see it as a woman, but it is Lucifer. I could believe, like, Lucifer can change his form or something, but I don't think that's what they're saying here. I think they're just saying Gwendolyn Christie is the definitive Lucifer in this universe. And then we get Mazikeen also, which just reminds me of the Lucifer TV show, and I'm like, God, how different that show's tone was. So yeah, it was a little weird, but it wasn't, that didn't, like, upset me like the Constantine thing did, because I was like, it still works, and it's still Gwendolyn Christie, and she's still very entertaining. So, yeah, that's what I thought of those two gender swaps. All the other swaps I have no opinion on. The other ones didn't bother me, really, but if you're a big fan of the Sandman comics and they bother you, I get it, and I think you have every right to be upset about that. I'm not like those people who say, hey, you're not allowed to be mad about it. No, you're allowed to be mad if, like, an adaptation makes changes you don't like. I think you're perfectly in your right to be upset as a fan of that. But the other changes didn't bother me. I thought, and like I said, I think the whole thing was very well acted. I really love Lucifer's assistant, Lucienne. I thought she was a very good character. And, you know, there was scenes with that character that I very much enjoyed. Mark Hamill is playing a Pumpkinhead guy whose face is animated. It looks like it's animated in stop motion, which I loved. I loved that. He doesn't have a lot of scenes, but it's still entertaining. The effects in this show were pretty good. The designs were cool. The dream world looks really cool. Hell, again, it was in the trailer. I'm not spoiling anything. Hell looks pretty darn cool. So yeah, overall, I was really getting sucked into this world and, like, caring about the characters. There were some I didn't care about as much as others. Like I said, the show has multiple plot lines. One of the plot lines, like the later one, I really didn't get into as much as the others, to be honest with you. But I didn't hate it either. So, yeah, there's no appearance of there's a little Easter egg of it, but there's no appearance of, like, the superhero Sandman who appeared during a certain time in Morpheus's life. I was hoping we'd get something with that, but we don't. Like, they do something very different with that instead, so I was a little disappointed by that. But overall, yeah, just some of the themes this show tackles are really interesting. Oh, by the way, if you want more gay representation, you're going to get a lot of that here, so good for you. Yeah, and what's good about that, though, is it never felt like politics were being shoved in my face or anything. It felt like natural, good storytelling that just happened to have, like, racially diverse and sexually diverse characters, and I think that's the way to do it. You know, stop treating, like, a diverse character like they're a platform for you to spout shit. Just treat them like a human being, and I think this show does that, and I really like that. So yeah, I do recommend this show. I like, if you have Netflix, check it out. I think it's worth checking out. Even if you're not a big superhero fan, it's still a very intriguing show that tackles a lot of interesting themes, which I will go into in the spoiler section. Do I have anything else spoiler-free to say about this? There's also several mythical references, which is why I'm talking about this show, obviously. So that's, you know, fun for myth fans and stuff. They did, set up a potential for Season 2, and I'll talk about what I would like to see in Season 2 in the spoiler section here. But overall, I'd say it's a good show. I know some comic fans are mad about the changes made, and I understand that. But in my opinion, even with some changes I didn't like and some small things that I think could have been improved on, I'm still very glad I watched it, and I am looking forward to season 2. And the show made me want to read the comics. It really did. And a lot of you have recommended the comics to me, and all the more do I want to read them now. So, and, maybe then I'll be as upset as some other comic fans are. But I have looked up the Sandman and what his story is, and from what I can tell, this doesn't, butcher it or anything. I think this does the adaptation pretty well, and I am very happy with how it came out. So, yeah, good show in my opinion, good writing, good actors, and I think that has a lot to do with Neil Gaiman being directly involved. Like I said, I have a lot of respect for Neil Gaiman, and his involvement really shows here. So, yeah. That's pretty much all I think I have to say about this show, spoiler-free. I'm going to get into spoilers now. Okay, 3, 2, 1, spoilers! I can't think of a big thing to spoil right now. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff in this show. So we get the appearances of some of Morpheus's siblings. We see Despair and Desire and Death. We don't see Destiny, but we do see those ones. Despair's design is very interesting. She looks, I can't tell what gender, not Despair, I can't tell what gender Desire is supposed to be. Maybe Desire is supposed to be androgynous. I'm just going to say he for now, because he fathers someone in the show. But Desire has a very interesting look, and I think would make a really good villain in a future season. Despair had me a little uncomfortable with some of the things Despair does. So, I mean, I'm sure that was the point and they got that across. I loved Death. Death was such a charming, lovable, kind character, and that's something I always like to think about Death. And she even says, in the show, Death can be such a scary thing. I try to make it easier for people. And yeah, that episode where Morpheus is just talking to Death, I could watch that for hours, to be honest. I love watching two deities interact. I loved seeing Morpheus interact with Lucifer also. Only thing I didn't like about Death was she was wearing an ankh. So when she came in, I was like, oh, is that some Egyptian goddess? Or is that some Lord of Order? And it's like, oh no, it's Death. I'm like, what is an ankh? Has nothing to do with Death. It would have been so cool if you had some sort of symbol of Death as a hint as to who she is, because they don't reveal it right away. So I would have liked that a lot better. But I still really loved the character, and I loved the episode. And it even leads into, the second half of the episode feels like another short story. It's this plot where Morpheus and Death decide to give this random guy immortality just to see if he begs for death in 100 years, and he doesn't. So Morpheus keeps checking up on him every 100 years, and I really liked it, honestly. I was invested in it, and I wanted to see how this guy was doing every 100 years, and I was a little sad he wasn't in more of the show, to be honest, but I guess that would go against the purpose of what their meetings are about. So yeah, I really enjoyed that a lot. And, so yeah, like I said, I also really liked seeing Morpheus interact with Lucifer, played by Gwendolyn Christie. There were some things about that episode that were a little weird. He has to go to Lucifer to get one of his things back that was stolen from him, but a demon has it, so he has to challenge the demon to a fight, but it's a trial by combat, I guess, because you get to just pick your champion. Morpheus says, I'll handle it myself, of course, I'm a badass. But the demon says, I pick Lucifer. And then Lucifer says, oh, sorry, Morpheus, he picked me, so now I have to do it. What do you mean you have to do it? You do not have to do it. That's the stupidest rule I've ever heard in my life. Why doesn't Morpheus just say then, oh, I choose God to be my champion. He's stronger than you. That's a stupid rule. I always hate that when it's what champion will you pick? And it's I pick this person as my champion. That person says, I don't want to be, but I have to be because you picked me. That's dumb. They should have to. I think the idea was Lucifer wanted Morpheus to lose was the idea, but to even say, oh, I'm sorry, Morpheus, the laws of hell dictate that I have to, I think that's stupid. I think it would have been better if you had just hinted at it by having Lucifer, like Morpheus say to Lucifer, "You're not actually going to be his champion, are you?" And Lucifer could say something like, "Who am I to, like, refuse the request of one of my, like, people," or something like that. And with that, you could kind of hint that Lucifer wants Morpheus to lose, is the idea. And then the way they fight, here's the thing, if they had fought head-on, I'd be like, well, Morpheus would lose. He said earlier Lucifer is more powerful than him. But they basically fight by playing D&D with each other. I'm a dire wolf. Oh yeah? Well, I'm a hunter with melee ability, level 200. I liked it. It's just funny to think about. Also, another weird thing is, why even start as a dire wolf? Why not just start as anti-life or something like that? Oh, and I totally called what the last thing was going to be. It's like, what is stronger than anti-life, Morpheus? And I said, hope. And then later he says, I am hope. And I was like, oh my god, I fucking called it. It was great. But I did overall really like that episode. I just, it's just mixed in with certain other things. The Fates appear in this, which is cool. They've merged a whole bunch of characters. So they've basically merged all the triple women in Greek mythology together. So the three Fates are merged with Hecate, because he says, I summon the Fates, the Hecate. And I'm like, Hecate and the Fates are two different things, buddy. But I realized later that they were just merging them all together. Because Hecate is also a triple goddess. She's known to have three aspects, but she's also goddess of magic and crossroads. And so, there are points where the Fates say, you are at a crossroads. I'm like, you're doing the Hecate thing. And then a little later, they're like, you wouldn't want to meet us as the Kindly Ones. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, the Kindly Ones is another word for the Three Furies, which is another trio of old women. So they've merged all the old women trios into one. They're probably also the Grey Sisters. I wouldn't be surprised. And there's this scene, like Wild and I were laughing at, was when... they say, okay, you get 3 questions. That's all you get. You don't get to ask other questions. Like, oh, yeah, okay. And then he asks them 1 question. And then he accidentally asks, like, a sub-question. They're like, Morpheus, you only get 3. You can't ask extra questions. And they're like, oh, right. My apologies. I'm sorry. I'm like, and Will and I are watching like, oh, yeah, forgot about that, huh? But then he immediately makes the same mistake again. And then again. It's like, dumbass. How do you keep forgetting? You're a god. We remember, Will and I are watching. We're going, you idiot. Stop forgetting the one rule. Or just go get another snake and give it to them. Then you can ask more goddamn questions. I don't know. Yeah, this, but one, I originally thought, like, Charles Dance was going to be the big villain overall. I was very surprised that he died. I was like, oh, especially when he died. I was like, oh, okay, is the sun going to be the villain now? Oh, no, he's done at the end of the episode, too. Oh, I guess the Corinthian is the villain. No, he disappears for the vast majority of the show, but he is, like, the big finale villain. And I like the Corinthian. He has, like, this charm to him that I think is really, like, well done. But yeah, I also did like the story of Galt, the nightmare who wants to be a dream. But it seemed like Galt having little kid Jed pretend to be Sandman in his dreams was a replacement for the actual Sandman who's manipulated by 2 nightmares in his dreams, and I would have rather seen that story. Technically, you don't have to have the Galt story replace that, though. You could still do that other one, and I'm hoping they do. That's something I'd really like to see in Season 2, is some acknowledgement of the superhero Sandman. I'd like to see some of that. What else did I want to say? Oh, yeah, so, the stories I was very invested in. I was very invested in the Morpheus being captured story. The diner story was my favorite. I'll get a little more into that later. I loved, like, the thing with death. I loved the visiting the guy every 100 years story. I loved the Corinthian had a serial killer convention. That was hilarious. But I wasn't into the, what's it called? The Vortex. I wasn't into the Vortex story at all, honestly. I'm so sick and tired of the chosen one shit. Like, oh, you were just born special and you have the power to end everything or save it. I'm sick of that. I hate that. Stop doing it. I mean, I guess it was written like 20, 30 years ago, so they're adapting it fine, but I wasn't really feeling it. Fortunately, the characters were still good. I loved Unity, by the way. I was so invested in her getting to be with her family and have a happy ending. I was so bummed when she died. I was like, oh no! She was such a charming, lovable character. I didn't want her to die. Also, though, when she died, I think it would have been great if, like, because they show her in her bed, like, dying. I think it would have been great if you showed sitting across from her was like death, like holding her hand or something. I thought that would have been a great way to really tie it all together. Missed opportunity, in my opinion. Also, Stephen Fry playing Gilbert. What a charming character. That was great. Yeah, but overall, really wasn't super into the Vortex storyline, but, you know, the characters were still okay, and the serial killer convention was really funny. And I like how it ended with the serial killer thing, because I was like, they're not just going to let all these serial killers go. Are we going to get some kind of massacre, bloodbath? No, they do something more clever. I love how Morpheus creatively talks about dreams or uses his dream abilities. Like the way he gets out of hell is he tells Lucifer, you know, if you wrong me, Lucifer, I can take away your victim's abilities to dream of heaven. And their dreaming of a better possibility is what makes hell so torturous. So that's one way he outwits Lucifer. He escapes his prison by manipulating somebody's dreams. I love the creativity of it all. And so I love how, like, his way of punishing all the serial killers is, you have all been living in a fantasy, a dream, that you are the victim, or you are the good guy, or what you're doing is right, or that you had no choice, or that you're making the world a better place by doing what you're doing, or that, you know, you're not in the wrong. Well, now I'm going to strip that dream away from you, that fantasy, that, like, lie that is clouding your judgment, and you will be faced with the reality of what you are and what you've done, and you just have to deal with that now. You have to know how horrible you are. You have to know how horrible what you've done is, and that's it. And he just lets them all go, and some of them can't handle it. You watch them breaking down, crying. Some of them are turning themselves into the police. Some of them are offing themselves. And yeah, that was a really creative way to handle it. I really like it. Neil Gaiman's really talented. Also, so I really like that. Now let's talk about my favorite part of this whole season, the diner scene. Man, that was a good episode. That could have been a movie by itself. That could have been a whole movie on its own. Just like, you know, Lupin in there. He goes into this diner and they establish so well all these characters that come in. I feel like I know what all of them are like. And they come in and he just watches them. He just watches them be what they are, and he can tell, like, moments, and even we can tell moments where they're not being honest. They're being dishonest, or they're holding things back, or they're putting on a face. And Lupin takes all of that away from them. And we start to see them just say what they want to say, or say what they've been holding back. And he doesn't let them leave. It's interesting. He comes in there during breakfast hours. And everyone there is just there for a bit. Like, oh, all right, I'll grab a coffee real quick. I have a job interview to get to. Or, hey, yeah, we're just here for a quick meal. It's our anniversary, or something like that. But you see, if you pay attention, Lupin's been keeping them. You can look at the windows. It starts getting darker and darker as the episode goes on. Even though these people are supposed to be here for 1 hour max, some of them like 10 minutes max, they've been there all day. And it's something you can easily miss. Like, the whole scene just gets darker and darker. And some of the secrets that come out are like, ooh. And it just, like, I loved it. It was so interesting. And I really wanted to see where every single one of those characters was going to end up. And then at the end of it, it's like, you know, I was sitting there with Wilda, and we were actually asking each other, did he do the right thing? Lupin, was it right for him to take those lies away? Like, because they were living in a fantasy land, and we were having trouble figuring out if he technically even did anything wrong. And this is the brilliance of this series and the way it's written. We had it paused when we were talking about that, and it was difficult for us to come to a conclusion. Then we unpaused, and Morpheus showed up, and he explained why what he did was wrong, and we were on board. We completely understood it, and we believed it. It was wise. It was like, all I did was take away the lies. This is who they are. This is the truth of humanity. And Morpheus says, no, This is not the truth of humanity, because humanity has hope. Humanity has dreams. Yes, people have difficulties and things they're holding back, but they also have things to aspire to. They have hope that they can reach better things. When you take that away from them, when you take away all their hope and their belief that they can reach better things or be better in life, or their, hope that not to hurt somebody, and to then all you've left them with is just acting on every urge they have and being horrible. And then, yes, when you take that away, now this is the truth of humanity. But it didn't have to be. You did that. And yeah, they say it better in the show. I don't think I'm doing it justice. But really liked it, honestly. Really liked it. That episode was a big, oh, I'm so on board for the rest of this episode. Yeah, so really good overall, really good show. Is there anything I'm missing that I wanted to mention? Season 2 seems like it's going to be a war of hell versus the dreaming. That ought to be interesting. We've got Cain and Abel in the dreaming. It's a little weird. So they're dream characters, which I thought was suggesting maybe they're not real, but hell and Lucifer are real. So what parts of the Bible are real and what aren't? It's hard to tell. I mean, I guess this is Neil Gaiman's own world. He can decide what's real and what isn't. Also, in episode 2, I was the most tragic death of all, Gregory the Gargoyle. I didn't want him to die, and when Cain and Abel were saying it's not fair, I was like, you're right, it isn't fair. I don't want that sweet gargoyle to die. Yeah, that was sad. But you see how invested I was? I think that's a good sign here. So, yeah, overall, I would rate this show very highly. I'd probably give it an 8 or a 9. The only thing holding it back is how not interested I was in that vortex shit, and the making Constantine a woman for absolutely no reason shit. I didn't like that at all. It kind of ruined that episode for me. But there are things in this show that are 10 out of 10 great. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I think you should check it out. I had a fun time watching it. Thank you guys for recommending it to me. I think I will be checking out the comics once I get the chance. But in the meantime, I've got some other stuff I gotta get to. Okay, I'm the Mythology Guy, and I do not know how to end videos. Bye-bye.